I'd like to call the Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education regular public meeting for November 21st, 2019 to order. Mrs. Sarah Daggy, will you please call the roll? Mrs. Bauer? Here. Mrs. Boroff?
Here.
Mrs. Brody?
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Here.
Mrs. Suriani?
Here.
Mrs. Williams?
Here.
Mrs. Winkler?
Here.
Mr. Murray?
Here.
Dr. Kulikowski? Here. Quorum is present. Thank you, Mrs. Sarah Daggy. Will you please join me in the salute to the flag? Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We just came from executive session where we discussed the personnel agenda, the HIB report, the legal status report, and the suspension and detention report. At this time, we have additions to the agenda, added after Friday, November 15th. We have one LET, an email from Ida Siegel, one PERS, personnel agenda, 2 BUS, staff training, and 14 BUS, the Brunner Gymnasium work. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests will be discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Board of Education offices held at 512 Cedar Street, Scotch Plains, New Jersey. Such notice was provided in written notice and forwarded to the Star Ledger, the Times, the Township Clerk of Scotch Plains, and the Borough Clerk of Fanwood in the revised annual notice of regularly scheduled meetings adopted on August 29, 2019. At this time, we'll have the instructional updates. First, we'll have the recognition of Charlene Hall and Christiana Garcia for the receipt of the Frederick Hipp Foundation Award for Excellence in Education.
So I would like to call Charlene and Christina up to the podium, please. 26 years ago, the NJEA created the NJEA Frederick L. Hipp Foundation for Excellence in Education to provide opportunities for public school employees to expand their vision of excellence in our classrooms and in our schools. This year, that excellence was captured by our two elementary teachers from Brunner Elementary School, Christine Garcia and Charlene Hall, grade 4. Together, these two innovators were awarded grants from the Hipp Foundation that focused in its simplicity on providing flexible seating for students and literature that explored self-regulation, conflict resolution, and mindfulness. But this grant gave our students much more than comfy chairs and books. What their grant, and more importantly, their insight focused on, was making their classrooms more supportive for our students and more aligned with mindfulness practices and student choice. Ms. Hall and Ms. Garcia have taken their vision even further. They received another grant that paid for decals that will align the Brunner hallway floors, think Candyland, and aid our children in practicing mindfulness, self-regulation, and calming techniques. Please join me in honoring and congratulating these two educators for their creative problem solving and dedication to their students and our district. Thank you.
Photo bomb.
Would you rather yours?
Thank you.
Have it. We'll circle.
check the hallway and see if there's
Or maybe ask if they have any questions about the grant.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the grants that the Mrs. Bauer?
I did. It's given through the.
Come back.
Sure.
It's given through NJEA, right?
Yes.
Were you presenting down there?
So we went to the convention, and they had a beautiful ceremony to recognize everyone for the HIP recipients. And I was honored to be able to receive a different HIP grant many years ago with Mary Snow, when I was a very young teacher, and she kind of took me under her wing. The thing we learned while we were there is next year we'll be invited back to come and present about our awards.
Wow.
Oh.
So we'll be part of the convention floor and be able to talk about people that could be interested in writing a HIP grant. So they can kind of get the idea of the process.
So the ones that are on the display are from the previous year
They
because
are.
it gives you a chance to finish.
And there's an opportunity that, we've discussed about, applying for more funding. This kind of originated through the EEF grants. We wrote one last year called This Makes Sense to Me, to kind of get that ball rolling to get some social emotional things for our children and to provide them with some safe, soft places in the classroom and some really great books. So then we looked at the HIP grant, which provides like up to $10,000 for educators.
And I think there are fewer than 20. How many awards were there?
17.
17
awards
across
given
the
out
state.
Out of 358 applicants.
Wow.
So the continuation grant, which would be what we might apply for next, that would be something that could build on top of this. So we're learning a lot through the process. We're moving through the phase of, buying all of the materials and really developing a curriculum that we could teach with, and noticing, that changes the goals change. And so we're thinking about what could benefit the school overall and not just the immediate classrooms right now, where, other students can have access to the materials where they can borrow. So things we're playing around with is, mindfulness library that we could kind of have a cart for and students and teachers can borrow from. We might have a parent night where they can kind of make materials, kind of a take and go. So we're collaborating with the PTA about that. And we also been thinking about doing like some sort of mindfulness Monday of some sort, to sort of get the whole school involved and really get the literacy out. I mean, we ordered over 50 books, so it's really important that teachers really know that they can have access to them.
And I think one of the things we're really excited about is the hallway, the opportunities in the hallway for kids to go out and take a break, and just fun way to kind of get them moving around a little bit and transition right back into the classroom to be open for learning even more.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a little bit about the Candyland.
So there's these stickers that, they have different themes. So we're trying to strategically think about where we could place them in the building. They get put down on the floor in the hallway. They get covered with the floor wax, so they're kind of permanent. And then the kids can go out there, and their fun is like jump, 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 twist and turn. They have like themes like the, under the ocean. They have space themes. Very, appealing to kids.
Yep.
It sounds very interesting, and maybe you can even do a future instructional update,
Sure.
take a video of the students doing it and show us how Brunner looks with this new addition, because it sounds really great.
Thank you.
And
Very
congratulations.
That's part of we have to write a report and do a presentation, so we'd be happy to come back and
There
share
you go.
that.
Or have
Future
you come back.
instructional update,
Yeah,
please.
and a financial
have a
report's
question.
coming up, so all of that, those are tools we could definitely come back and share with you
That's
all.
great. I
Maybe even
look forward to
a
that.
board field trip.
Yeah, there you go.
We'd love that.
I have a
The kids
question.
would like one.
Ms. Soriani?
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to say I'm glad you came to present this. First of all, it's aligned nicely with our strategic plan and student wellness. I'm also a social worker, so I understand the importance of self-regulation, and I think if you can give kids the tools to regulate themselves early on, that's something they could take with them their whole lives, so it's absolutely priceless. I was just wondering whether you had an opportunity to evaluate, the success in your classrooms. Like, did you notice that the kids who maybe needed more time to self-regulate, were taking more advantage of those materials? Did you kind of see behaviorally over the that things improved? Or I'm just curious about the results.
Well, I can tell you about my classroom. So a lot of the tools that we present in a way where anyone could choose.
Yes.
So it's inclusive. And I can tell you that in independent work, especially when students have the choice to be at a stand-up desk, on a beanbag, on the floor, on a cushion, and or a chair, that just the idea of choice and having the opportunity to make that choice for themselves. We teach a lot about what kind of learner are you? I can tell you that I found a lot of success in completing the work and in the level of engagement.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
But we do take anecdotal data. It's also part of the
grant.
The end of the year report. Yeah.
And then just feedback from parents about how their kids are coming home saying about the soft seating that we might have in the room.
And student surveys, things of that nature.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for thinking globally, and we'll look forward to your report and for representing Scotch Plains.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
You should go and get your flowers into the water now.
Okay, next for our next instructional update, we have Tom Potter from Potter Architects providing information on the Brunner gym floor and the park masonry projects. Mr. Potter?
Overhead.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh,
You need a computer?
Yeah.
Does it have to be, can it be one of ours, or does it have to be?
It needs to be.
Regina has that.
Gosh, I'm taking you home with me. You're figuring she does.
iPads.
It's famous.
Armchair.
It's famous.
Charlene taught my son's class. Oh. She's extremely She's extraordinary. Yeah.
It's the laugh because it was weak.
Yeah.
Because it's around my son. I didn't want to make it personal.
She's
I'm not really sure.
she's a
how to map it
superstar.
on the map.
Yeah. Parents, I pray they get her. Yeah. I'm sure Ms. Rodriguez is just as good, but I have personal experience with him. So impressed by all the teachers that come to
Well, I'm trying to get to this. Step. I need to get it to show on the screen.
and creating a safe environment.
Okay, that's good.
I did.
Right. That's what I loved about it. I forgot that you had the other master's spreadsheet too.
No, I didn't do that.
I used the clicker.
There's a remote to turn it on.
Yeah,
I think I just. Oh, okay.
Reality goggles.
There it is.
Isn't that
Yeah, that should be it. Thank you.
Yeah. Why does it have it? It's so expensive.
Well, that's right. Exactly. Right. Right.
Good evening. My name is Tom Potter from Potter Architects. Some of you may know my name. I've worked for a number of years with the Board of Ed here. It's been a pleasure. And I'm here to talk about a couple of projects. One, I believe, has already been authorized, and the second one is being contemplated, I think, perhaps up for approval tonight. I'm going to talk about the Brunner. See, it's not typed correctly here. That's better. I'm going to talk about the Brunner Elementary School gymnasium repairs first. So what I'm going to do for each, and the second project I'm going to talk about is the Park Middle School Masonry Restoration Phase 2. So for each school, I'm going to talk a little bit about the scope of work. I'll go into some detail on what we're going to be doing. I'll talk about the budget for each project, why we need to do the work at each school, and then I'll show you some images for each school, and then I think we should maybe do question and answer right then and there, and then once we finish Brunner, then I'll move on to Park School. So for Brunner School, the gymnasium has exhibited noticeable settlement, and this has been a slow, creeping process over a number of years. The addition was built on the school approximately 2002, and I want to say it was first noticed maybe 5 or 6 years ago that it was starting to sink, if you will, in one corner. A geotechnical engineer by the name of Frank H. Lear Associates was hired, I believe, last year to come out and do a survey. So what they did is they did probes into the earth around the gymnasium and found that there's bad soil actually underneath the building. And it's deep in the earth. It's about 25, 30 feet below the surface. But nonetheless, it's not suitable for supporting the weight of the building. And it's mostly concentrated in the southeast corner of the building. So it's down by as much as 8 inches at the worst spot. So as a result of that, the gym floor is sloping. There are cracks. There are some cracks in the block walls inside the gymnasium area. There are some noticeable cracks in the brick and some shifting of the brick on the outside of the building. And the caulk joints on the outside of the building are sliding against one another, if you will, and they're starting to open up quite a bit. The building has a complete structural steel frame, and it's infilled with block. So the good news is that the building has, for the most part, stayed intact structurally. It's still structurally sound. But it's important to arrest the settling, because at a certain point, the building will rack to a point where it becomes dangerous, and once it gets beyond a certain point, you would have to go through great measures to structurally reinforce it, or you would have to demolish it and build a brand new replacement building there. So I would urge the Board of Ed to go forward with this project and brace it and stabilize it and make the repairs. Some of you may be wondering what the cost of a brand new gym versus the repairs would be. Currently, we have the repair work estimated between $700,000 and $800,000. There's a big wild card in there because the helical piles that are required to stabilize the footings and the slab are very expensive, but we're getting a wide range of estimates on the cost of those, anywhere from $2,500 a piece to as high as $7,000 a piece. And we need approximately 41 of these piles. A helical pile is similar to like a wine corkscrew, if you will. They're driven down into the earth. They twist as they go down. They're driven to a point of resistance where they hit the solid earth beneath the soft earth. And then there's an attachment made to the footings on the building to stabilize them in their current position. Inside the building, the slab is going to be demolished, and a new slab is going to be installed. These prices, I'm trying to get down to the. I'm trying to do it. Oh, okay. So the helical piles is the big wild card. Right now, in the budget range of 700 to 800,000, we have included the repair of the brick on the outside, the repair of the block on the inside, a new slab on the inside of the building, a new gym floor, and all of the site work around the perimeter of the building, because in order to install the pilings, they have to remove about 10 feet of the asphalt around the outside of the building, and they have to then drill down alongside the footings, and then they've got to restore that earth and then redo the blacktop around the building. So there's going to be about 10 feet of the blacktop, and all of the earth from about 10 feet back to the building wall would have to be removed to put the pilings in. And then the balance of the pilings would go inside the building under the slab. About half of the slab has to receive pilings as well. That's the part that's sloping. So if we get a better price on the pilings in the bid, we could see a reduction of $100,000 to $150,000 from this budget. So until the project is actually bid, we won't really know the cost of the pilings, but I've spoken to 3 different piling contractors so far to get pricing. If we were to take the approach of not trying to save this building and build a new building, the total square foot of this gym addition is approximately 4,000 square feet. And with the demolition that would be required, the cost would be approximately $400 a square foot. So a replacement building would be in the area of $1.6 million. So the worst case scenario is the repairs would be about half the cost of replacing the building. And I'm hopeful that we would get it with the public bidding process, that we would get it for maybe $100,000 or $150,000 less than that. So my recommendation would be to save the building in its current form and do the repair work to it. I just made a note at the bottom here about professional services. We're doing the architectural work and the structural work. We have a structural engineer in our proposal. The board is required to hire a geotechnical engineer to do special inspections during the construction work. It's a requirement of the building code, and the township is going to be looking for special inspection reports. We had to do special inspection reports. We didn't do them. They were done by an outside group as well, for example, when we did the additions on the kindergartens. So for heavy type of construction work where you're building footing support, structural steel, concrete work with public buildings, including schools, you have to have a special inspection company come in and provide that service. So I think Debbie may be talking about that as well later on this evening. I want to minimize this first.
It's not used for an apple.
It's a little different.
If we
than my
repair it,
windows.
it's half that,
Is
or
it that
maybe
one I
less
counted
than
on?
half that.
Right? Can't minimize it.
That is a big number. Of the what?
Structural parts in
It includes all of it. This proposal is to
Well, close it or
repair,
minimize it
to
so I can open up some of the
repair all
images.
effects, I think. You can ask that question. Is this? Huh?
Does this include the geotechnical engineers?
No, that I don't think it includes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. This is a little light for some reason, but for those of you that are not familiar with the plan, the gymnasium area is here. The balance of the school is over here towards Westfield Road. And the playground area is around the outside here. The bad settling on the building is in the area of these two walls. And it's approximately this half of the gym floor that is going down. And the worst spot, which is down about 8 inches, is in this corner right here. But as I mentioned, the whole building has a steel frame, so it is tilting uniformly. And the area where the pilings will be installed are along these footings, here and here, and then a grid of pilings that would be installed under this slab here.
It's the Spfboe thing on the window that you just opened up.
This one here?
Yeah, on the left. See where it says Spfboe a little bit lower?
Yep.
Single pane track.
These are the interior views of the gym. So these zigzag lines here are some of the cracks that have occurred in the block in the worst corner. But again, they're repairable right now. There's a couple on this facade as well. This is the wall looking towards the south. So this is the exit, the double door that takes you out into the corridor. The opposite wall has the two exit doors that go towards the playground and the parking lot. This is the end where there are no doors, just the basketball and the two windows. There's also a crack in this wall. And then the opposite wall where the gym office and the storage room are, there's also a bathroom behind this wall. There are no cracks at all in this wall. These are the outside views of the building. This again is the east wall facing the back of the building towards the woods. There are joints currently in the building right now that are absorbing a lot of the movement. They're the vertical lines here. Those are the caulk joints that are already in the brick. Because the joints were in the brick previously, it prevented a lot of the brick from cracking. So the caulk joints actually did their job. And then finally, the other elevation that faces the parking area that does not have any cracks or any movement in it at all. So, just in summing up, it's about half the price or less to repair this building as opposed to tearing it down and building a brand new one. When the repair work is done inside the gym, we're planning on laminating a heavy-duty wallboard over the block so that once the repaired floor is completed, because there's sloping of the existing block, we were concerned about the aesthetics of that you would see the sloping block against the new level floor. So by laminating over all of the block with an abuse-resistant wallboard and painting that, it would basically look just like a brand new gym from the inside. If you were to take laser measurements, you would be able to notice there would be a slight difference in the height of the ceiling from one end of the gym to the other. But it's basically not going to be noticeable. A brand new gym floor is included in the budget, which I think was a lot of the driving force behind this project, is that we wanted to do the floor, but obviously you're not going to put a brand new floor down over a sloping, cracked concrete floor. The project would take, we think the project would take approximately 3 to 4 months to complete. So we were hoping to be able to maybe start the project before school let out, perhaps in May or June, cordon off part of the playground area so that we could at least do the exterior pilings around the outside of the gym without disturbing anything inside, to at least get a jump on some of the work. And then, of course, once school lets out, then they can move inside and start doing the the demolition work and the piling work on the interior of the gym. And then, we would shoot to have everything wrapped up by the end of August. So that's basically the project, the scope, and the budget, and the rationale for it. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Yes.
So, two statements. One is, it sounds like it's not an if, it's a when. So it sounds like something has to be done here regardless. The second thing is, I don't think building a new gym doesn't sound like an option for us as far as when you talk about fiscal responsibility. So I'm kind of on the avenue of what you've been talking about. But I guess a couple questions on the existing. And I don't know, if you were not involved or not involved in 2002, but 17 years and this problem exists doesn't sound like something that should happen. So, A, is there any culpability on the prior either contractor, architect, anything from that regard?
We were the architect for the project. And, well, that's okay because there was also a geotechnical engineer that did soil borings back when, before this project was contemplated. There were borings made. To the best of my knowledge, none of the borings hit any bad soil. That was our recollection. The company that did the borings is not the same company that the Board of Ed is currently using. So I don't know exactly what happened during construction. I do recall there was a full-time construction manager. There was a general contractor that built the project that's long since out of business. And, going back and finding the original, this is before the days of the things were on the computer. So there's no computer record of any of the old geotechnical report. But certainly this shouldn't happen. That's the whole purpose of doing soil borings. However, when you do soil borings, it's basically you're taking probes into the earth and hoping to find out what's going on. But until you actually dig the footings, you don't know all the conditions below the surface. So it's still possible that they could have taken 4 or 5 borings here and not hit any bad soil. It is possible. My understanding is that there was actually an old pond on this site. And that old pond, plan here. For some reason I cannot get back to the floor plans. I know, I'm spoiling my next show here. No, I can't get back to the... Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, my understanding is that there was an old pond on this site. And that pond was in the southeast corner. The pond was... from like the turn of the century, there was a pond here. And currently, right about here, there's a sewer grate. And there's a low spot in the playground where the whole playground goes down like a bowl. And apparently they may have just come along and just filled that thing in without cleaning out all the soft, mucky pond bottom from 100 years ago. And that's the reason why it's sinking. What happened during construction, I don't know. I don't know why It's possible that they did borings, they didn't go deep enough. Maybe they went down 25 feet. The bad soil is down from around 30 feet deep here. So it's possible they didn't go deep enough. I don't really know why, but it shouldn't happen. I think the Board of Ed did everything in their power at the time to avoid it. They built, I think they built 8 additions in that bond referendum. And I think this is the only one that had a problem like this. We built the exact same addition on this school. It was also done, something very similar was done at McGinn, School 1. And this is the only place where this happened. So it's a bit of a mystery to us as to why.
Can you give more detail what you mean by bad soil?
So the bad soil has to have a certain compressive strength. So when the borings are done, they take actually a core of the soil and it goes to a lab. Normal soil, good soil for supporting buildings is in a range of 3,000 to 4,000 square feet, 3,000 to 4,000 pounds per square foot. And the soil that's here is like, it's almost like a peat-based material. And it's not all of the soil, it's just one layer that's buried very far down. So once the weight of the building got on top of the good soil above, the entire mass just started compressing that spongy layer many feet below the surface. So that's what we mean by the bad soil. It's got organic content in it, so it compresses.
In no way is it contaminated.
No, I'm not referring to contaminated soil. I'm just talking about it's an organic, soft soil that had they known that was there, the original building would have had to have been built on pilings, or they would have had to over-excavate all the way down to the bottom of that soft organic soil and remove it, and then replace it back up to a normal footing level with a compacted stone or concrete, some kind of a reinforced material suitable to hold up the building.
Do we anticipate or should we be concerned about any other parts of that property and the building, other parts of the building?
Well, the original building has been there, I believe, since the 50s or 60s. I think it had an addition on it. I think the original building was 50s. There may have been an addition in the 1960s. And I don't think there's any evidence of settling with any other part of the building. And as part of the updated report that Lear did, they did probes all around this gym. And the only place they found bad soil is where the settling is evident in the walls, which again is on the two walls that are perpendicular to each other here in the southeast corner. So the cracking and the settling in the wall coincides with the probes that were done recently that show the soft soil. You're welcome.
I have a question. Right here.
Oh,
right.
Yes.
Let's say that there's another layer of peat at 40 feet down, and you put all these new pilings. Will the same thing repeat itself?
It could, but I think that I don't have a copy of the report with me, but that's really a question for the geotechnical engineer. They went down with the soil borings. I believe they drove the borings to resistance. I think they hit bedrock.
Okay.
So they went down, I think, 35 to 40 feet deep.
Until they just couldn't go down
until they were hitting like solid rock.
Okay.
And what they call resistance.
Mm-hmm.
They just literally couldn't go any further. They would have to dynamite to go deeper than that, or bring in like rock coring equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I think the geotechnical engineer is relatively confident that they're in, and in fact, the new helical piles that will be twist driven into the earth to support the footings will be driven down until they hit that layer. So I think the chances of hitting more peat or organic soils below that depth is very, very low, very unlikely. That's a good question.
Another question. I know you would need to start it to be able to complete it before school starts the following year. But how loud or disruptive is the drilling of these things into the ground while school's in session?
There's probably some noise and some vibration associated with that, and I'm going to have to get a little further information on that from the piling contractors. It's not a pile driving apparatus. It's more of a machine that twists. It twists these the same way like a corkscrew goes into a cork. It's that kind of a motion. So it's not. You may have seen a pile driving, or you may have heard pile driving in the past. It's very noisy and impactful, and a lot of vibration. I think the helical pile is relatively quiet. It's just going down through the earth, and the noisiest part of it, I believe, is probably the motorized equipment they use to spin the pile as it's going down.
Okay.
I don't think it's so noisy that it's going to affect educational space, as opposed to whereas this gym it's fairly isolated from the rest of the building. So they probably could live with a little bit of noise in the gym, I would think.
Okay. Thank you.
I know we're not buying a car.
So I know we're not buying a car, but is there like a warranty of guarantee of something that comes with the construction of this from the geo firm or the contractors or anything? I don't know if it works that way, but
Well, the normal warranty period, and I didn't write this rule, but the normal warranty period for construction is 1 year. You can get a maintenance bond, I believe, for up to 2 years. So we could write a 2-year warranty for the project and require a 2-year maintenance bond. I have not heard of maintenance bonds going out past 2 years. So that is really, to my knowledge, the most you could get is a 2-year warranty. There may be some third party, or there could be, I don't know, there could be something potentially with the insurance policy for the commercial policy.
I believe that the New Jersey State Code has some sort of legal recourse for up to 10 years after construction is done, and that's it. That's cut off after that.
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
My first question is these helical pilings, is that something they're doing through some sort of a horizontal drilling process, or are they going to blow through the gym floor when they get to the part of it? Or how are they installing these things under the building?
So the ones that are installed from the outside that support the footings, they get as close as they can to the footing, and then they're basically driven vertically. Okay. They're also going to put in helical piles for the footings on the inside of the gym. So the footings are going to receive helical pilings on both sides, from inside and outside. When they do the ones inside for the slab and for the inside of the footing, they're removing the old slab.
Okay.
The slab that's there now is, I believe it's a 4 or 5 inch thick slab, but it's sitting on the soil that has subsided. They're going to put a grid work of pilings inside the gym where the earth is soft. And they also took borings inside the gym, by the way, as part of the investigation. They came in and made holes in the gym floor, and they drilled into the earth to locate the pockets of bad soil in there as well. So the ones that are driven in the slab area inside the building are also vertical.
Okay. My other question is the $700,000 to $800,000 estimate does or does not include the geotechnical engineer?
It does not.
Okay.
I think Debbie will speak to there's a proposal from the geotechnical engineer.
Thank you.
Okay.
Some of it's in hearing. Those on the table.
Yeah, I tried that. Okay. Okay, so the Park Middle School Masonry Restoration Phase 2 project. So we completed Phase 1 last year, last summer. That included the media center and all the way around the back of the building. The parts that were not addressed were the original building, which is facing Park Avenue, which was built in 1924. And then each side of the original building has a wing that goes back towards the towards the west, towards School 1, which looks a lot like the 1924 portion. The feature of architectural feature of the 24 and 38 parts of the building are the decorative terracotta heads. Unfortunately, the decorative terracotta heads are probably the biggest issue with the 1924 and 1938 parts of the building. They're coming up on 100 years old, 100 years old and 85 years old, respectively. They were built well when they were first built, but due to the age and the technology available when they were first constructed, the terracotta heads they're rotting out is really the problem. The support for the terracotta heads is it's made of steel and it's really disintegrating. That's really the heart of the matter. But beyond that, the rest of the building has not had a lot of maintenance work done to the masonry. There have been some attempts at masonry repair on the original parts of the building. I'll refer to them as the original portions of the building. There have been some attempts to repair things there over the years. It's kind of hit and miss, patchwork. But at this point in time, the masonry, the brick is really still in pretty good condition, but all of the mortar in between the bricks needs to be repointed, similar to what we did around the back of the building this summer. The brick needs to be cleaned. There are some cracks in the brick. There are some other lintels that are rusting. All of the brick should be waterproofed. All the caulking on the building needs to be replaced. A lot of the previous repairs to the terracotta are discolored. They were not done with proper materials, so they're absorbing water. They're turning black. They're falling. Some of the repairs are falling out. Some of the brick needs to be tied back into the backup material. There's just a number of different things, but for those of you that are familiar with the back of the portions of the building at Park, I think you could agree it looks like night and day. Some parts of the building, particularly the media center, which was covered with green moss and leaky parapets, all these things have been addressed. So that once the building goes through a masonry restoration, it looks close to a like-new building. And a typical masonry restoration will extend the life of the masonry by anywhere from like 30 to 50 years. So it's a really good investment. At this point in time, the repair of the terracotta heads is what I would categorize as emergent. You'll see in some of the photographs, it's quite shocking how bad the condition is. And I brought along a piece of the terracotta. It's probably too heavy to pass around, but I wanted everybody to have an opportunity to see this and perhaps try to pick it up because this is 30 feet in the air all around the school, and I can't hold it anymore.
Turn it towards everybody.
Yeah. The pieces, each individual piece weighs approximately 30 pounds. So some of these are literally just hanging off the building at this point.
Great.
It won't take much for them to come loose. The worst pieces on each side of the building, we had a probe performed by a contractor in the spring and then again this fall. So the very worst ones were secured by a contractor recently because we needed to investigate the backup material to try to understand what was going to be needed in order to repair these. So the worst areas have been made safe for the time being, but all of the rest of the pieces around the uppermost floor are in various stages of decay. So at a minimum, at an absolute minimum, something has to be done with these terracotta window heads. There are 42 of the terracotta window heads on the building. They're in some different forms, different lengths, different shapes, but in general, there's about approximately 42 of these head conditions, and the repair is approximately $12,000 per window head. That includes removing the terracotta, repairing all of the backup material behind it, which is supporting structural steel, which is rusting, and then repairing these terracotta heads, because a lot of them are cracked, pieces are missing, and then restoring them back into their original configuration. The balance, so we're budgeting approximately $1 million to do this work. That includes the 42 terracotta heads, which is approximately half of the budget alone. The balance of the budget is going to go towards replacing other window lintels that are much simpler, steel angles, repointing all of the brickwork, cleaning and putting waterproofing in, and redoing all the caulk and repairing cracked brick throughout these two original portions of the building. We're still developing all the details for this project. We have been authorized, so we're developing the details and refining the budget as we go through. I do expect to issue an updated budget once we have all the details established. We have engaged a terracotta specialist. It's like a historical restoration specialist as part of our team, along with a structural engineer, and they're currently working alongside with us, developing the plans. I just want to show you some images. I'm still in Word, that's why. So here we can see this is obviously the most recognizable part of the building. So these are the typical terracotta window heads I'm referring to. Along the tops of the windows, some other parts of the terracotta are just simply embedded into the brick. Then we have a very fancy oriel window here with an arched main entrance. And then as we work our way around the building, So just working our way around the building, you can see the continuation of the window heads. This is the parking lot side. The original building ends here, 1924, and then this part is all 1938. So this was the back of the building at one time. The detail of the window heads is actually slightly different from one portion to the next. This is the south side of the building, opposite the parking lot. Again, the continuation of the heads. So from a distance, these window heads really don't look that bad to the unsuspecting. But as we start to take a closer look at them from the ground, you'll notice that as you look up, there's a couple of telltale signs. You can see a line in the brick here. This is where the brick is actually shifted out 1 inch from the original position. So from this point up, all of the brick is pushed out. We can also see a dark spot here. This is a joint in the terracotta where this piece is in the original position, but the piece above it has pushed out 1 inch. And we can also see the sky through all of these joints in the terracotta, which means that all of the mortar that's holding it together is gone. So the water is just coming right in. And then once we're up on a lift, and I'm sure most of you have never seen it from this angle, this is the head-on view from a genie lift. This is that 1 inch projection I was referring to, and you can see it's very clear once you're up close to it, the damage that has occurred and the displacement. So these pieces are literally pushed out as much as 2 inches here from their original position. The piece I brought here tonight is actually one of these pieces that's still intact. But each one of these pieces weighs approximately 30 pounds. So during the probe, a company came in and started to dismantle one of these terracotta heads so that we could understand how they're supported. So as you may be able to see this. This is a piece of structural steel that's embedded in the brick wall behind the terracotta pieces, and it's severely rusted. It had some kind of waterproofing membrane on it, I guess 80 or 90 years ago, but it's all gone. So the water is getting in behind this, and it's rotting out this structural steel. Going a little deeper into the probe, this again is that same piece of structural steel we just saw, and we can start to see a support ledge here that's actually holding the terracotta in place. This is like a steel angle that's bolted into this piece of steel, and this is doing all the heavy lifting basically. It's holding these pieces in place, but unfortunately, as I'll show you in the next slide, this piece is severely rusted. So this is a close-up of that support ledge, and you can see the steel is starting to basically disintegrate. What we did is we continued down the line here, removing many of the pieces to expose this entire support ledge. And this piece of steel in particular, which is critical, is in very poor condition. This piece of steel used to be approximately a 1/2 inch thick, and because of the deterioration, its current condition, it's only a 1/16 of an inch to an 1/8 of an inch thick. It's so rotted that in places it's so rotted out that your finger can just go right through it. There's virtually nothing left of it. This is another close-up. So you can see all the scaling and flaking of the steel. This is just from years and years of water penetration, getting in there behind the terracotta and laying on this steel, which is just, it's regular steel. It's not stainless steel. It's not galvanized steel. It's just a normal piece of steel that would otherwise rust if not painted or coated. So this is a view looking back. This is the probe area, and this is a view looking back at the adjacent terracotta head that has not been addressed yet, obviously, but you can clearly see the shifting here. And what actually causes the shifting, as the steel rusts, it swells and expands. And that is referred to as oxide jacking, and that actually swells with the rust and starts to push out on the masonry. So that's what's actually causing the displacement. There's another piece of steel just like this behind this piece, and all the way down the line it's rotting and swelling, and it's starting to push this out. So the one that was very concerning with all the broken, fragmented pieces has been removed and secured for the time being, but this is typical of other pieces all around the building where it is shifting out. And this, again, is just a close-up of that same view. The backup material in this wall is important to discuss because there's poured concrete here, which is actually part of the roof deck on the building, and there's a solid brick wall, which happens to be in very good condition, especially considering its age. But the plan here is to clean off these rusted steel members down to bare metal, weld new reinforcing plates on them, and then we're proposing to put in new stainless steel angles to support the terracotta. Stainless steel angles would never rust again. They would last forever, literally. They're not a huge difference in cost compared to galvanized steel angles, which would be the next choice. But for the amount of effort and expense that's going to go into repairing these terracotta heads, we're going to recommend doing stainless, or at least get a price to do stainless steel support angles, which can be welded back into the reinforced structure behind it once the work's completed. All of these cracked pieces of terracotta will be restored or repaired, or there'll be replacement pieces made. They'll take good ones, such as the one I have brought tonight, and use that as a template, as a mold to make replacement pieces, because as you go around the building, you would notice that there's several dozen of these pieces that are actually missing. They've been patched in with brick or cement because at some point in time they broke away from the building, and rather than leave a hole in the building, they patched them in with cement blocks or brick or some other material that doesn't match. So this again is the heartbeat of this project. All the other associated work is more the run-of-the-mill masonry restoration, as far as the pointing and cutting and cleaning, waterproofing of the brick. And there's other caulking and lintels to be replaced. But this is the big expense of this project, and this is the most important part of the project as well. So I guess I would take any questions now on this project. Yes.
Question. Thank you for that thorough presentation. You mentioned that the original building was from 1924 and the addition was in 1938.
Yes.
Would the renovations be uniform, even though it was a 14-year difference from the original structures, or would there have to be different things going on?
That's a great question. There is a slight difference in the steel support angle between the two different time periods.
Okay.
They both used a support ledge, if you will, similar, but the piece that's behind it, that's embedded in the building, is a different configuration. Okay. Other than that, it's identical.
It is. Okay.
Yeah. And they used, oddly enough, we were able to get from Debbie the original design drawings for the building. The building was supposed to have a wood-framed roof. And for whatever reason, the contractor elected to pour concrete. So the roof of the building in both the 24 and 38 is poured concrete. And that poured concrete is embedded in the wall itself. So we're seeing actually concrete on the left side of this photo. That's part of the poured roof deck that comes down and becomes embedded in the wall, which is of great benefit because we're going to be able to anchor a lot of our restoration work can be anchored right back into the concrete, which wouldn't be there had they built the original spec of a wood-framed roof. So we're very fortunate. But we actually did go into classrooms on the second floor in both the 24 and the 38 with Anthony Miranda and a structural engineer and the restoration specialist. We opened up the ceilings above the hung ceilings, then we went above the plaster to verify that there is concrete roof structure all throughout the second floor of the 24 and 38 buildings. So that's a really a bonus, an unexpected benefit.
And possibly a savings.
A savings for sure, because had it been wood frame, it would have been much more complicated to try to reinforce these lintels, and that concrete probably wouldn't be present in the wall behind the lintels.
I have a question. If I remember correctly, when I originally heard we touched base about this, I think through a committee meeting, the actual terracotta window heads are logistically required for the building. It's not just aesthetics.
It's not just aesthetics. If we were to remove the terracotta completely, it could be patched in with brick or some other cast material. But in any scenario, we still have to have a structural support lintel above the window because something has to hold all the brick, the weight of the brick and the wall above the window opening. So the window itself is not capable of holding the weight of the wall above it. So there has to be some means of supporting the brick and the masonry wall above the window. So if we were to eliminate the terracotta in its entirety, we would still have to do the repairs to the steel and introduce a support angle.
Are those options limited as far as, do you think that going with the terracotta is the best option? It just seems like it.
Aesthetically, a lot of the terracotta pieces are in good shape. The issue with them is their displacement. So I don't have an exact figure, but I'm going to say 80% of the terracotta is in good shape, possibly 85% of it. The pieces are completely salvageable and can be removed in their entirety without damaging them. The ones that are cracked can either be repaired or replaced with replica pieces. That said, if we eliminate all the terracotta, and I understand what your concern is, we would probably have to put brick back in its place. So the brick and the repairs to the steel and the support angle, there's not going to be a huge savings. I would say there would be some savings, but then you'd have to consider the aesthetics of the building because you're going to lose the entire character of the look. My vote is, as an architect, is to try to keep the building in its very nice appearance. Sure, it has a lot of sentimental value to the residents, but ultimately it's not my decision. I can only make a recommendation. If the terracotta it was so disintegrated throughout that it was beyond salvage and we're looking at a full restoration replacement of the terracotta, I would say it might be worth looking into an alternative. But enough of it can be saved that, and we have a historical terracotta specialist that we hired, and he does these all over the country. He's of the opinion it's worth salvaging as well.
Thank you.
For the replacement terracotta pieces, for some reason in my head when we spoke, when you were at our facilities meeting
Yes.
at one point, there was alternatives to using the terracotta itself.
Yeah, the replacement pieces will not be true terracotta.
Right.
They're going to be a cement-based material that is cast into a mold. The mold is made from an original piece, of terracotta, so it's an exact match. But this stuff is readily mixed and can be done in anybody's shop as long as they have a mold. And then they apply the coating to the outside of it to give it that white, grayish mottled look so that it would match exactly to this appearance.
Weight's the same?
It's actually a little lighter, the replacement pieces.
Yeah.
And they will be similar to these. They're hollow in the back. I didn't mention it because I didn't want to go into too much technical detail, but one of the problems that led to this condition is that there's really no flashing in the wall. So flashing is a metal, hopefully metal, but not always metal. It's a membrane that's introduced into the wall that goes up over the steel members, and then it gets tucked into the wall, if you will, so that any water that gets into the wall and starts to seep down into these metal parts, it hits the sheet that guides it and makes the water exit the building before it lays into the steel and starts to corrode it. So as part of this restoration work, we're going to have all new flashing behind the terracotta, and there's going to be ways for the water to drain out, because this was all caused by water infiltration over a long period of time. But water got in behind these heads, through the joints, and the water, unfortunately, the way this was detailed, with the lintel tucked in behind. Go back to a slide here. In this image, this is the supporting angle. So as you could imagine, if any water got in behind this, the water comes down, it gets into this position, and it really has nowhere to go. So the water would just lay in here. Every year, any water that got in here would just sit in here, and it would just exacerbate the situation. It would just start to corrode this piece of steel. In the new configuration, what we're proposing to do is to actually put the new support steel underneath. We're going to have a piece of steel that comes down and supports from below, so that the natural drainage pattern would allow the water to just drain right out. In addition to that, we're going to have a stainless steel flashing that would come out behind the terracotta. It's going to go up, and then we're going to cut into the backup material here and tuck that piece in. So it's almost like an umbrella shield, if you will, that goes behind the terracotta to prevent any of the steel from seeing moisture or water.
And in your professional opinion, there's no chance that any bricks or anything could fall at any time. Everything is still secure enough that the children are obviously safe, right? We don't need to nets up or anything.
However,
Yeah.
However, I would highly recommend that between now and when this project starts, that at least on a weekly basis, maybe the head custodian take a walk around the outside of the building, and if anything looks glaring, it should be brought to the attention of the school administration, so that some action, at least cordoning off with some safety tape, could be done with some kind of safety barrier, because the only way I could ever guarantee it is if we went on a lift and did a probe on every window head, and
Of course, but I didn't know.
this one here, I can tell you that from the ground, you could see the pieces were loose, and these happened to be over the grass area. This was not over one of the sidewalks, but I do realize that, yes. This area got fenced off. Yeah. A lot of these, fortunately, are over landscape areas as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that's over the main entrance of the school is a different configuration. It's not one of these typical. It's not one of these typical arrangements here. So yeah, looking at the front entrance, fortunately, most of these are over landscape areas where the kids generally are not. The ones that are over the main entrance here are a totally different configuration, and these are all relatively secure. There's no obvious visible displacement of the pieces over this entrance.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just go around and look at the other ones. Here again, these are generally over landscape areas.
Mm-hmm.
All this is grass. The one that's up here, I don't recall seeing any serious displacement on that one. And this one, again, above the entrance is intact. So, yeah, there's the fencing. This is where that probe was done, where I showed all the gory pictures. This is where they actually took out all the pieces and they put in a temporary support here, and then this is fenced off. So the one that was next to it that also looked badly displaced has fence below it. But yeah, I would say, until the project starts, it's going to go through another winter with water and freeze, thaw, temperature swing. So it's just a good practice to, knowing that it's there, you have to keep an eye on it. Yep. Any other questions?
No, this was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, it does. Yeah. Oh, so a little bit about the history of terracotta. So terracotta was made in factories around the turn of the century, before the child labor laws. So the way the terracotta was fabricated was that this clay material was placed in molds, and very frequently child labor was used to press the clay into the mold. And each piece of terracotta actually has little tiny fingerprints.
Kind of sad.
I know.
Not always little tiny fingerprints, but those are actually, depending on the size of the fingerprints, these look very small.
Can you turn the light on
You can
now?
actually see these
Please.
were,
You mean
these were just a little, they're very tiny and narrow. So and some of the pieces that we removed had big, wide, like 3/4 of an inch wide fingerprints. So these were actually probably a 6 or 7 year old. Everybody's guess.
Wow.
It's creepy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But every piece has these fingerprints in it, and they're different. They're different on every.
Was that imported or from the United States?
It's domestic. It's from the United States. Those are actual fingerprints here, where they push the clay into the mold.
Wow. That's not
So every
disturbing.
piece- I know. Every piece has different.
Different size
different
fingers.
Size, yeah. Some of them, their fingerprints go in different directions. Oh.
I remember seeing it last time. Is that a summer project as well? This summer? Our budget creepy. Both of those projects structurally.
That's we already have money. It's not a budget issue.
You wouldn't know until you look at a couple pieces, and then you start to realize they're different. They're different widths. Some of them you can even see some of the. You can actually see some of the prints themselves.
Yeah. Okay. So way to look at it.
I was trying to look at the prints.
Yeah.
So these are the actual clay into the mold, and on every piece, these are different. Sometimes going in a different direction.
But think about it, if you'd had a
Sometimes they made a
building and you were
Going here.
personal.
Oh, no, $1,000.
So if you go down here.
That size of that building.
Oh, this thing.
That includes a playground area. Now that you mention it, it's still. I've never really been there.
Outside.
Yes. Yes, at Brunner.
It's actually, this is in great condition.
It doesn't look like terracotta. It looks like a facade of something else.
It looks
on
like
top
stone,
of it.
right?
Yeah.
It was intended to look like granite.
Yeah.
So it was a cheaper version of the
Well, he
granite
said
look.
part of
But
it.
considering that this has been up in the weather
And they would
all
still
that
have the
time,
gym.
it's really still
You learn a
in
little
very-
bit. Just take a
very
picture.
good shape. And this is why we're suggesting. I don't know if
Well, you have
anybody
to go home so that they don't get confused.
from the outside.
Uh-huh.
This is really in very good condition.
Terracotta machine.
Really good shape considering its age. It's hardly been weathered, so it's really well made. A lot of the pieces are in perfect condition like this, so that's why we're recommending getting rid of it. If they were all cracked into little pieces, we would.
Seems like a great. I have a toddler, but just because it's got such. I've never seen my sister-in-law. So
It was intended to look like-
you don't like it?
No.
It seems like a. Oh my god.
But it was intended to look like granite.
Yeah, they did a great job.
Less expensive.
Thank you so much for bringing that.
Yeah,
I appreciate the fact that you brought that so we can see it and feel it,
Yeah.
and that little history behind the child labor.
What's that?
Yeah, we got a show and tell at one of the facilities meetings. It was nice.
Do we get to keep
It's
that?
like pottery clay.
It's yours.
It's
For $1 million, we do.
The what?
That is
$1 million
amazing, and that's what was
So what
exposed.
they do is they fire the piece, just like,
Like a ceramic.
like a ceramic. They fire the piece, and then they take it back out, they coat it with the glaze, fire it again, and then they coat it a second time. And that's what gives it the different colors.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing that, and both of your presentations were very
I'm gonna bring this one
eye-opening.
back. I'm not going to leave this one because we're using this for detailing.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, Mrs.
Not for
Fowler?
him. No, not for him.
Any other questions?
Not for you, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
But-
so much, Mr.
Okay,
Potter.
good night.
For Mrs. Botsford and Dr. Mast, are you considering using any of this in either location for the curriculum in terms of science, history?
I do think that Mr. Potter gave an inspiring presentation, and it does seem like there's opportunity to integrate it with at least a history of the building. And as he pointed out, child labor laws. I know students today complain about homework. Perhaps they'll enjoy doing it more in the context of history. So thank you for that suggestion.
And thinking about the building area, but also thinking about the science related to
These are the
water.
fingerprints here.
A lot of possibilities there as well. And compressive strength, shear strength, soil.
Great ideas.
You have it,
Call
Regina?
Mr. Potter to come and present.
Okay, that concludes our instructional update. In accordance with the Scotch Plains Fanwood Public Schools bylaw 0164-0165, the meeting will be open for 15 minutes for public comments. Maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers addressing the superintendent items, business functions, and other board business will be heard first. If time remains, speakers may address other matters. When you come to the podium, please state your name, your address, and the town in which you reside. Seeing no one at this time, we'll move on to the committee reports. Mr. Murray?
The Facilities Committee met on Monday. We had two items. One was the high school culinary arts classroom design. Should be completed by mid-December, so there'll be a meeting with the architect, supervisor, classroom teacher, and the business administrator review plans, choose finishes. This would be a summer 2020 project. The other item was a draft budget assumptions document was handed out. We reviewed at the committee, so there's nothing for the board to take action on at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Any questions?
I just know we've been talking about the culinary arts classroom for a while. I'd like to, maybe there'll be an opportunity for us to see it. It's done.
That would be wonderful. Any other committee item items, Ms. Brody?
We met on Monday. There was a few things on our agenda. The first is we're considering going with the verifyresidents.com. It's a company that will verify residents of our students based on comparison with proprietary databases such as consumer reporting agencies, financial lending institutions, and all three credit bureaus in the U.S. Postal Service National Change of Address database. The cost is $1.50 per student, and it would cost around $8,500. There's an additional cost if we use their investigative services, if there are students that don't match the information that we have. But Ms. Saradaki is going to discuss this with both chiefs of police before we make any final decision. Tom Potter has provided us with this proposal for the repair of the gym floor in the amount of $68,700. High Step contract. High Step is an organization that runs Cold School in the summer. They have a contract increase of 2%, which will round down for the summer of 2019. We will also ask the board to approve the sale of 1,020 Dell Chromebooks from 2015 through the bid process. And we also did discuss draft budget assumptions that was handed out to us. And we recommend 2 through 5 for approval. Everything but verified residents because we're not sure what to do.
Thank you, Ms. Brody. Any questions? Okay, any other reports?
I do have community relations.
Oh, sure.
We also met on Monday. We didn't take any action on anything, but we just had a lot of discussion on our communication efforts with the public in regards to recent events that happened through the district. And we're in the process of formalizing a process for ourselves as a committee and guidelines, so we know how our committee would handle those kinds of issues. We did have a consensus overall that we really just need to be better at communicating to the public of what we are continually doing and planning on doing to handle a lot of these ongoing issues, and our commitment to the public will be more proactive. I know Dr. Mass had given a list of things. Do you want me, or you're going to take care of the?
Do you have them there?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. So we do have a district action plan that was put together by Dr. Mass. So the things that we have going on currently is there's a No Place for Hate committee at the high school. It's a group of student leaders and school faculty from various organizations, and they're working together to combat and prevent further instances of hate in our school. The No Place for Hate student group will be presenting to the 9th and 10th graders, which is a continuation of last year's workshop titled Through My Eyes. That's one thing that we currently are doing and continuing. The district will continue to work with the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Committee and Social Justice Matters in partnership with the town of Scotch Plains and Fanwood. That is ongoing as well. We will have student reps attend the next TRHT meeting with Dr. Mass and Stephanie Serrani on December 12th. And the district administration will continue to listen and respond to the student voice through student leadership groups. And that's everybody, and that's continuing. The 10th grade American literature curriculum now includes additional books that address the greater diversity and perspectives and identities. One unit in particular was designed to foster ethnocultural empathy through research, narratives, and intergroup dialogue sessions. Each dialogue session took place after school and brought together students and educators to discuss identity, privilege, and the power of narratives. Something else, we have unconscious bias workshops. The social studies teachers created classroom lessons through teacher professional development and administrative workshops on understanding and overcoming unconscious bias. And things that we're looking to do is a book club, Tell Me Who You Are book club. And in the spring, Letitia Patel and Brooke Esposito are planning a school community book club focused on the text, Tell Me Who You Are. The book was written by 2 high school seniors whose school project turned into a year-long inquiry on race, identity, and racial amenity. Something else in the works to do is organize a school and community event with students which will focus on uniting students together as a community, respecting everyone's differences. And that will be led by the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Committee, Dr. Mass, Dr. Heisey, and student leaders. And we're going to do that as soon as possible. Also recognizing that the symbols of hate are often spread through social media, and knowing that white supremacists have been recruiting students through social media, the district administration is working with Scotch Plains and Fanwood Police Departments to organize a responsible social media use symposium for students and parents. And that's tentatively scheduled for December. Cultural responsive school leadership framework, Mohammed Khalifa from University of Minnesota will be, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. A culturally responsive school leadership framework will be developed in January and February. I hope I said that right. Yes, you did. Okay. And so far, that's what we have currently going, that's what we have coming up. I hope I didn't miss anything on the list. Dr. Max was very hard at that, thanks very much. And we will continually bring more things to the forefront.
Thank you, Ms. Brody, for sharing those things. Just to emphasize, I certainly did bring all of this material together, but I met with the administrators Monday morning just to discuss the things that we are doing and the things that we want to do, just to gain the momentum and urgency based on recent events. So based on that conversation, I've also moved forward and have met with some student leaders. There's interest across the student body, our administrators and our teachers, that we want to come together and really do this work in an ongoing way. But it's important to recognize that we have been doing things proactively, and we recognize that we need to continue to do that work, as well as adding new items, particularly the ones that are of interest to our students that they have brought to the forefront.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brody. Thank you, Dr. Mass. And are there any other committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to letters for the board. There was one LET dated November 14th from Ida Siegel asking for a quote from the superintendent regarding incidents on November 11th. The superintendent's office followed up. And that brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Mass.
This evening, we need a motion on 2S, move that the Board of Education affirms the superintendent's decisions in the 2 November HIP cases that we discussed in executive session. Neither case was determined to be HIP.
Thank you, Dr. Mass. So I have a motion. Mrs. Winkler, thank you.
Second.
Mr. Murray, thank you. Any question or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Additionally, I would like to ask the board to move to approve the curriculum committee recommendation of adding the environmental science at that academic level.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkler and Mrs. Brody. Any question or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Mrs. Saranaki, please call the roll.
Mrs. Winkler. Yes. Mrs. Brody.
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer.
Yes.
Mrs. Bora.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mrs. Suriani.
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Murray.
Yes.
Dr. Kulikowski.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mass. Personnel agenda.
I'd like to move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent's recommendations for personnel on the personnel report dated November 21st that we discussed in exec.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Thank you, Ms. Winkler. Any question or discussion? Mrs. Saranaki, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Murray.
Yes.
Mrs. Winkler.
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer.
Yes.
Mrs. Bora.
Yes.
Mrs. Brody.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mrs. Suriani.
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Dr. Kulikowski.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Saranaki. Thank you, Dr. Mass. Again, we will go into our public portion, so in accordance with the Scotch Plains Family Public Schools bylaw 0164, 0165, the meeting will be open for 15 minutes for public comments, maximum 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers addressing superintendent items, business functions, and other board business will be heard first. If time remains, speakers can address other matters. Approach the podium, please state your name, your address, and the town in which you reside. Seeing no one, we will move on on to the business functions. Mrs. Saradaki?
Yes. I will group the ones that we're going to vote on if there's no objection.
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. One BUS was approved on November 14th. Two BUS is the program of staff training on the superintendent's report dated November 21st. Three BUS was approved November 14th. Four BUS are the budget assumptions and guidelines for 2019-20, and if you look at them, you'll see there's no significant change from last year. Five BUS, I'll be asking the board approve the private vendor-related services for 2019-20, and that's for EDU Healthcare in the amount of $18,000. Six BUS, I'll be asking the board to approve the facility use agreement with Behavior Therapy Associates for the use of Cole School for the summer 2020. Seven BUS, I'll be asking for the board to approve the use of the non-public security aid requested by St. Bartholomew Academy and JCC of Central Jersey. Eight BUS, I'll be asking for the board to approve the proposal from Potter Architects for the Brunner Gymnasium settlement repairs in the amount of $68,700. Nine BUS, I'll be asking for the board to approve that we advertise that we did the sale for Dell 3120 Chromebooks, and that's 1,020, and I believe they're from 2015. 10 BUS, and that will come back to the board once we have bids for your approval. 10 BUS, be asking for the board to acknowledge receipt of the district school security and fire drill reports for October 2019. 11 BUS, I'll ask the board to acknowledge receipt of various disbursement listings for the month of October 2019. 12 BUS, I'm asking the board to acknowledge receipt of the board secretary reports, the treasurer's school fund reports, and budget adjustments for October 2019. 13 BUS, I'll be asking the board to approve bills for the period of October 26, 2019 to November 15, 2019 in the amount of $645,938.60. 14 BUS is the addition to the agenda, and this is for the engineering work from Frank Lair Associates, an engineering company. And they have a proposal for actually $21,000, and $3,000 is contingency for that $24,000. So don't anticipate going over $24,000. It could end up being less. And this would be withdrawn from the capital reserve for the project. So moved.
Second. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Saranaki. Other board business, any requests to attend workshops or workshop reports?
I have a workshop report from Garden State Coalition of Schools. They've been adding on some evening meetings, and the meeting last night was at Metuchen High School. I'm just going to try and hit a few of the highlights. So everyone knows since the election is over that the legislature's in a lame duck session till January 13th. And so there's a flurry to try and pass a number of bills, but also not look like they're passing things that would, in disguise, so to speak. And both the Senate and Assembly Education Committees have been very busy. One of the primary topics were related to the lunch shaming bills. So there's a whole series of bills you may have read in the paper about that controversy. And it includes things like one of the bills requires districts to set up an account to receive donations from the public for lunches for students who can't pay, and there's a whole wide variety of these bills. The guest last night was Senator Pat Dyer, and he's from the same district as Metuchen. He really talked a little bit about the good news that revenue is up in the state, which means that the budget assumption that we should hopefully get the same amount of state funding will hopefully be true, but one never knows what's really going to happen. But he was very interested in getting feedback from the members of Garden State about things like charter schools, because there are some bills to, and I think one of the ones he's involved with is re-looking at charter schools, not eliminating charter schools, but looking at various pieces of the charter school legislation, so people were providing input for that. There was a lot of discussion on funding and suggestions for that. There's definitely going to be a new health care bill, but they're just not sure. NJEA has been working to have a health care bill. So there are two bills. They haven't come to agreement yet, so that's up in the air. There was also, he was very interested in feedback because of legislation related to anti-bullying and some movements to, I hate to use the word criminalize, how would you say? But essentially, that's what it would do, is in some respects.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk right now in the State House about extending liability for acts of bullying, not just to students but their parents, about there really is no better way to say it than criminalize, but to attach criminal penalties to very egregious levels of bullying. One of the things that probably read a lot in the news is things like e-bullying. There's been cases, thankfully, in other states about people using text messages, Snapchat, things like that, to convince other people, suicide, things like that. And even in the states where there have been convictions or charges on that, there's actually been no specific statute in those states that says this conduct is specifically illegal to kind of shoehorn their way into it. So there's a lot of discussion about making that type of conduct more explicitly criminal. That doesn't touch so much on schools. It's just because things like harassment and bullying are kind of the subject of the day, it does come upon the school realm a little bit.
So he was very interested in feedback related to HIB and ways to improve it. It's been 7 years now. And so that was a great opportunity to have input, and there were a lot of good suggestions from different Garden State members. There's also a package of bills related to mental health. Also, let's see, a discussion of shortages in terms of staffing, school nurses, things like that. Also, there's looks like there will be a bill requiring student members of school boards. But one of the suggestions last night from actually Metuchen was to make it, to have some leeway in the bill, because they actually had decided not to have one student representative, but they have an advisory council that's 3rd grade through 12th grade, and they're very, very pleased with how that works. So there was, I think Garden State was going to put some input in to maybe how the student voice might work in districts. And just to let you know that in December, the Garden State meeting is December 18th at 3:30. The speaker the speaker is going to be the former deputy police chief of the Fort Lee Police Department. who's the current executive director of the New Jersey School Resource Officers Association and also director of security for Edison Public Schools. But he's going to be talking about school resource officers, HIP, other discipline issues, and the use of restorative practice. So if anybody's interested in that meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Bowman. Any other reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. I have a motion that the board approve the Board of Education approve the minutes listed below.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Second, Mrs. Boroff, thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. And for the last time this evening, in accordance with the Scotch Plains Family Public Schools Bylaw 0164, 0165, the meeting will be open for 15 minutes for public comments with a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers addressing the superintendent items, business functions, and other board business will be heard first. If time remains, speakers may address other matters. When you come to the podium, please state your name, your address, and the town in which you reside. Seeing no one, we'll move on to the remarks for the good of the order. Anybody have
Kowski, I would like to just share an update.
Sure, Mrs. Burns, go right ahead.
So for the past week, the high school has been experiencing the pilot block scheduling. So I spoke to Dr. Heisey today to get an update to apprise the board of the experience that the students have been having. And what was wonderful was that he shared that yesterday JSA debated about the block scheduling, and we received anecdotal, up-to-date student information about the block scheduling, so I thought it would be nice to share with all of you. So the students shared that they liked the longer classes, meaning every other day. It allowed them to slow down and to focus on fewer classes one at a time, so they enjoyed the slower pace. They liked study hall, and students actually worked in their small groups, and since it meets every other day, they were able to get help with their teacher and do work during the school day, so they enjoyed that as well. The one area that they saw as a place that needs further attention is the unit lunch. And one of the things that we know of is this was the pilot. There aren't things in place that we would put in place if we were to go to the unit lunch. So extra seating, things that would cost, that would be budgetary items, were not purchased for the block scheduling. So the students mentioned wanting more seating as definitely an area to work on. The students did enjoy sitting in the hallway and eating and spending time with one another. I know from watching right outside of my office, the first day was a little shocking. I don't think the students knew what to do with that extra time because they're so used to rushing through lunch. And today I will say that there were pockets of students sitting with one another, engaging in really nice, quiet conversation, and it was actually nice to see kids just being with one another, and enjoying each other's company. So that was a nice plus for me as an observer in the high school. Dr. Heisey did mention that next year, if they do go to the unit lunch with the block schedule, that there will be adults throughout the building helping to supervise in all the different locations that the students would be able to eat. There would also be smaller areas for students who really want or need a quieter environment than a busy cafeteria or a big multi-purpose room. So potentially some small classroom spaces or alternate spaces for students who need a quieter space to have lunch or just are overwhelmed by the sheer numbers. So they are looking at that. And as I've been in district a really long time, and I said to Dr. Heisey and Dr. Mast today, I was a part of the original team back in Dr. Heisey's first year that went to visit some of our pilot block scheduling schools 20 years ago. So in his words, which was really heartwarming, he said, "It went better than I expected, and I'm really pleased with the outcome." So I said to him, as a member of that original team that went, I know that this has been a dream for 20 years. So to get the student feedback that he did during a real debate was definitely a positive experience for him as principal with the vision, and for the students that they shared with him anecdotally.
That's great. And what about
Did he get any feedback from the staff?
They do have, they sent out surveys every day to the staff, specifically about the unit lunch and feedback from the staff. So that piece, they haven't collected all of that information yet. I'm sure they're waiting to get the last day tomorrow for all the feedback, but they did ask staff to give feedback via a Google form that was sent out.
I had the opportunity to speak with a few teachers and a few students last week, or might have been this week. Not a lot of people, but the students' comments were very consistent with Mrs. report. And the teachers whom I spoke with all said that they felt that they had a much more relaxed opportunity to teach, and also that they got much more done than they would have gotten done in 2 periods, which was a very interesting and very positive.
That's great.
And just to emphasize, the purpose of the pilot was to have the opportunity to collect data and and beyond that to formulate questions of what we would need to have in place that students have at least as many opportunities, perhaps more, moving forward. Certainly there are a lot of questions around the unit lunch of what we'd have to do to bring that up to scale. But at a PTA meeting that a number of us were at, a parent raised the concern that would my child have the same opportunity to take electives based on the AM period being removed. So we know that now that we have done it, we can really formulate the important questions and how it impacts on time for different content areas. There was a great deal of positive feedback, and the fact that they were able to put together a successful pilot this time of year really shows the dedication of the high school staff. And it certainly seems like the block schedule is possible, but there's lots of specific studying steps that we need to move forward.
Anyone else?
I wanted to quickly comment on the event that happened at Terrell Middle School. Dr. Matt Ballas spoke about a better high. And it actually speaks to what Ms. Rabinus was saying, is that Dr. Ballas was saying that due to all the social media, students are losing the ability to have empathy and to connect. And without the connection, anger is a failure of compassion. And when you were saying that students now are sitting together at lunch talking, I applaud Scotch Plain Fanwood's proactive attempts to recreate the empathy that's being lost based on the research. This event was well attended. It spoke about the importance of social support for mental health. It spoke about, again, going back to the social media, the phones, the sleep deprivation that students are experiencing, which leads to attention problems, processing information problems, anxiety, depression, etc., suicide ideation. So remember to take care of the phones, keeping the kids together. And he also talked about, which I thought was interesting, that when students choose natural highs, exercise, finding out what they like to do, meditation, that the chemical, the endorphin that's produced in your body, right? Ms. Boroff was there as well, and Ms. Patrice was there as well. The molecule is the exact same molecule structure as marijuana. So students are literally getting high off of positive things. So we're going to encourage it, and clearly we're doing that with the pilot of the block scheduling. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Anyone else?
I also was at that, and it was, oh no, that's okay. It was, he did a great job of putting out the message in a very entertaining way, and he was very good. He did do a big push on meditation, which is not really very time-consuming to do when you think about it. So it was a worthwhile thing to maybe think about, even having implemented a little bit within the school, because it's very beneficial just for a little brain time out. But I also want to thank the SPFBA, the PTA Council, and Municipal Alliance Committee for putting that whole thing together. They did a great job.
Thank you, Ms. I have something. Cassie? I had the pleasure last night of attending Watchung Hills Regional High School, their program Warriors United Against Hate with Dr. Mast and yes, and Colleen Halbert, our Evergreen principal. And it was very interesting. This was a program done by the students, organized by the students, because of a recent event they had at their school. And it was very thoughtful. They had some very thoughtful students that spoke. And they had a couple short musical performances by the students with songs that were Imagine, and what was the other one?
All I Need Is.
All I Need Is Love. From my time period. It was probably not the program that we need to bring in this district. It's more like the program that we had last year. But it was very interesting. They did have a speaker who spoke a little bit about work he does at different places regarding, his focus was on, it wasn't on bias. Was that it?
His work was on
anti.
It was about community healing.
Yes. But he focused on being against people who are biased, rather than the biases that people have. I think the word was bias. Racist. Being anti-racist. Not just identifying racism, but being anti-racist. So it was a good program.
Was it a specific speaker, or this was done by the school?
It was done by the school, but there was a speaker they brought in.
And who was that?
Guillermo Lopez Jr. He's a first-generation Puerto Rican. He's consulted with over 20 universities, 31 communities, and 14 different states.
He was very much a facilitator of the students and community to come together to begin the healing. So it was very much about recognizing the hurt and also recognizing the importance and contribution of the diversity within their school. The most powerful part, I believe, and I think Mrs. Haridaki does as well, was the student voice. The student voice was most compelling. There were some students who stated that they feel like visitors in their schools rather than part of their schools. And it just was, it was really an invitation to make sure that none of our students feel like visitors.
Mrs. Winter, yes. Wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. But also, I wanted to mention the high school PTA and the Scotch Plains Family Police Athletic League are coming together for the first, what they hope to have as an annual holiday craft and vendor fair on December 7th from 10 to 4 at the high school. There will be a kids' corner, holiday pictures, the Angry Elf Cafe, raffles and more things, and we just hope to
to raise some funds and have a good time, and hopefully people will be able to enjoy supporting some of the businesses that are there as well.
The hours?
10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
And what was the date again?
December 7th.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitaker.
December 7th.
If I may continue on the business theme, I had the pleasure and privilege of attending the entrepreneurship breakfast at the high school last week, sponsored by DECA. There were, I would say, 15 to 20 local entrepreneurs who were present for our students. It was sort of like a round robin. Students circulated from one business professional to another and had in small group conversation opportunities to ask questions about challenges and opportunities and overcoming issues, and to get a real life look at what it is to be an entrepreneur. I especially want to thank our local businesses for participating in this effort. Marjorie Fitzgibbon is the teacher advisor, and I have to compliment our students. They totally they planned and ran the show, and they were just so professional and so articulate. I knew it from the moment I walked in the door. This is just the front door at the high school. I was greeted by a student who was expecting me and walked me personally to the room where the event was occurring, and just told me all about DECA and the purpose of the day on my way there. And it just, that level of professionalism just carried through the entire thing. So commendations to our students for doing this, and our appreciation to our local business owners.
Great, thank you for sharing that one as well. Anyone else?
Just jump in real quick. I just want to say congratulations to the girls soccer team. I think they feel like we haven't had a meeting since the time, right? Which I know Dr. Mass and I were at, I'm sure. So I as a player in high school, to see us go to state for the first time was a pleasure. It was great to see such a huge crowd there for Scotch Plains, being that it wasn't right here. So the other thing I wanted to mention, I had also gone to an assembly for students, but I want to thank the PTA. I think that they're often thanking us for what we do, and we got to see firsthand. You can see what they do all the time, but they had put together an assembly for Terrell Middle School that also Dr. Mass and I had gone to, just on a whim, on seeing someone that they thought might make a good impact on the students, and invited them to the school. And it certainly was a really well-run program, focusing on kindness and on overcoming obstacles, and sort of the focus of similar to what we went to the night before. So I just want to give a shout out to the PTA for that. So.
Was there a specific speaker, or?
There was, and I just don't remember the name. It was two gentlemen. They changed their focus a little bit when they did 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th, but it was a very interactive group of really just, I know I'm not really putting together.
They focused on improvisation and magic, and they were engaged in those two areas because of tragic events that happened in their life. And I think the overriding message was from tragedy, you can move forward and you can pursue your dreams, and there's still joy to have. So the students were involved. The students also created some of the improv routines. There were animal balloons made. Students would request tigers and pigs and all different animals, and they'd always get a dog.
Just to add to that, today's NJ.com Girls Soccer 2019 Final Top 50, Scotch Plains fanhood was number 3 in the state.
And I think 38 in the country, or 36 in the country.
That I
it was
think so
one
too.
or the
39. I think it was 39.
Or 39.
So this came out today, so it's very exciting for the girls.
I think we should mention the play, right, tomorrow night at the high school.
Tomorrow and Saturday, yeah. Midsummer Night's Dream. And in addition to that, I'd also like to share with you the Scotch Plains Family District will be having a viewing of the Screenagers, the next chapter, Uncovering Skills for Stress Resilience. Filmmaker and physician Dr. Delaney Riston takes a conversation around screens and teens to the next level with Screenagers, the next chapter. Uncovering Skills for Stress Resilience, a film that examines the science behind the teens' emotional challenges, the interplay of social media, and most importantly, what can be done in our schools and our homes to build crucial skills that navigate stress, anxiety, and depression in our digital age. This is going to be Monday, December 16th, 7 p.m., Scotch Plains Fanwood High School Auditorium, and it's free, but you have to RSVP to book your tickets at http://SPF Screenagers, screenagersmovie.com.
The flyers are posted on the website.
Thank you, Dr. Mass, that's good to know.
Ed will be putting it on the sign in the front of the high school.
Excellent. Anyone else? Okay, piggyback on what Mrs. Wingo said, I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and safe travels for Thanksgiving. Enjoy the time off with your friends and families and some well-needed rest. Have some good food. And I look forward to seeing you back here on Thursday, December 19th for the regular public meeting. That will be our only December meeting. And that will finalize our 2019 meetings. And then after that, we meet on Thursday, January 2nd for the reorg meeting at 7:30 in this room. So at this time, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Thank you, Ms. Williams. No discussion, so everyone want to say all in favor? Aye. Good night, everyone.